What has surprised you most about this career?
Oh gosh, the stories people confide. I can't share them with you, but I've heard it all. Professors were like, "Oh, someone's going to tell you this or someone's going to do that." I'm like, "No way." Sure enough, I'm like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, okay."
Robert Jones III, Esquire?
No.
I
could, but no.
I don't really know what that means other than from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
I think somewhere historically it meant a gentleman. So
Okay.
in Old English history, I think it had something to do with being a gentleman.
Okay.
And the legal profession was part of that gentleman class.
And so now it's associated with, do you have to do something to officially add that suffix to your title?
No. Certainly it's associated with the legal industry, and so you wouldn't want to add it without probably practicing law. You might get accused of unauthorized practice of law, but it's primarily used by lawyers, but historically did not have to be a lawyer to use it.
Well, we'll just go with Robert Jones III then.
Yeah, we can do that. That's fine.
And there's a fourth.
There is a fourth.
So I know 3 and 4.
Yep. And all of us are still alive. So
that's
Numero
fantastic.
Uno is still with us.
Wow, that's really cool.
In fact, we just went and celebrated his birthday recently.
Nice. How old is he?
He turned 90.
Okay.
So,
That's really cool, man.
Best we can tell, there's no actual birth certificate.
Okay.
So, we dug into it. No one's actually seen the birth certificate, but generally we think it's 90. So,
That's
which
funny.
would be 1935.
Wow, that's great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Sure.
Really looking forward to this conversation with you.
Yeah, likewise.
Tell us a little bit about what you do now, and then we'll kind of circle back to the beginning and let you tell us how you got there.
When you say what I do now, what do you look primarily
Like
occupation, life? What do I do for fun?
I'll leave it up to you a little bit vocationally, and then
How much time we got? No, I'm just kidding.
3 hours.
Yeah. No, it seems like I'm always going, something to do. But for occupation, primarily, I practice law. I've been practicing law for 20 years now. It's a field that I had no experience with, but I certainly enjoy it. Get to help a lot of people and meet a lot of interesting people. And so I approach my law practice as a form of ministry. And so there's opportunities to help people, and I've seen so many different types of people and different problems, and it really is fascinating. That's the work side. Family side, obviously, busy family, 4 kids, wonderful wife, who takes the burden off of me by helping with those 4 kids way more than I could ever contribute.
It is great to have a great helper.
Absolutely.
So, well, tell me a little bit about what area of law you're in.
Oh, sure. So I'm actually a board-certified tax lawyer, one of only a handful in the whole panhandle of Florida. And there's about 200 out of the, I think someone told me there was a well over 100,000 lawyers in Florida. Don't know exactly, but there's only about 212 board-certified tax lawyers.
Okay.
And so what that means is after I took the bar exam, I went back to school for 9 more months because tax law is not on the bar exam. It's not required. It's a specialty. It's a subset of the law. And I sat through 9 more months of schooling and then started practicing full-time. I was practicing part-time while I was doing that because we had just gotten married. And so I felt like I needed to earn some living. But tax law is it kind of sits on top of the rest of, I do regular wills, trust, business law, those sort of things, but the tax component goes with that. What that means is I can try tax court cases, so I can go into tax court, which is a specialized court based out of D.C., and I've usually take 1 or 2 a year just to keep that portion of my practice active. Very few people in Pensacola, certainly in the panhandle of Florida, will even take those cases. So I will generally carefully select those cases because obviously I don't want to be a full-time tax trial lawyer. Trial work is extremely difficult on the family life, difficult on the just professionally, and so it's not something I wanted to get into. any more than I already have.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can avoid, well, I say that. I was going to say, I don't think you can avoid the courtroom, but people do regularly. The practice of law has so many different avenues, but for me, I did not want to be a full-time courtroom lawyer.
What kind of strain does that put, just time-wise? And
yeah, time-wise, yeah, it's probably a little different now, but when I first came out of law school 20 years, well, it was a little over 20 years ago now.
Goes fast.
Actually, it'll be 20 years. It's 20 years this year. This is my 20th year. So I graduated in 2006.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. And so it puts a strain on family life from the standpoint of previously, prior to 2020, I guess, when suddenly virtual and Zoom and everything became remote. Before that, it was a lot of travel. So when I was first coming out of law school, we didn't have nearly the electronic capabilities that we have today. In fact, in the court system, what is called e-filing, where you electronically file pleadings and other stuff, didn't really exist. It came about early in my career. And so you would actually have to physically go to court. And so trial work, when I looked at it, and I was in law school, I clerked for a trial defense firm, and they were traveling all over the country. And I looked at that scenario and thought, probably not what I want to do. Right. For family life, I just didn't want to be gone any more than I have to. And so that schedule just didn't appeal to me at that time. And it still doesn't. I don't mind the occasional business trip, but I'm ready to get home. And not that I'm a big homebody, but I like the comforts of home.
And your family.
Yes, yes, exactly. Well, that's what I mean by comforts of home. Yeah. I like the day-to-day interactions, some people would say, some people, think those are trivial, but I've come to appreciate those, just the little noises, the kids steps down running down the steps, pitter patter of feet across the floor, just those little things. You really do appreciate, or I appreciate them. And I was fortunate enough back then God revealed to me that is not the path for you.
Yeah.
To be gone all the time. And so I'm thankful for that.
So what drew you to the tax side of things? Why did you want to go for that additional training?
Yeah, no, great question. Because I did not come from a family of lawyers, and so that was not. In fact, didn't really have any great exposure to the law. And so when I got to law school, I assumed that I was going to be a prosecutor.
Oh, okay.
That interested me. I thought, well, I'll prosecute, and I think, that sounds exciting to me, and what little bit I knew about lawyers.
Some sense of justice there too.
Yeah, something like that. But that was not to be the path for me. I got to law school, enjoyed the first year. It had its ups and downs. I had a little bit of a learning curve. Things had always come easy to me academically, and suddenly they weren't. And there were people that had far greater exposure to the law that had a little bit of a leg up. And the first year of law school is designed to flunk people out. They tell you that. They want you are forbidden from working, and you cannot take a job. They'll kick you out. As far as I know, that is still the case this day. But they try to weed people out in that first year. And you take all assigned courses, no electives. They give you the course. This is what you're taking. It's pretty much basic across law schools across the country. And then you're allowed to delve into electives your second and third year. So the first semester of my second year, I signed up for a tax course. Friends of mine, a husband and wife that were going through law school together, the wife was a CPA and the husband was a finance guy. And they said, well, why don't you sit with us in tax? It's something that would be useful. I thought, well, I need an elective. Yeah, that sounds okay. It fits my schedule. And so I randomly picked the course. And I ended up getting what's called the top grade or book award for the course. And the professor was like, you have to be a tax lawyer. I said, well, what is that? I don't even know what that means. So, I'm like, aren't all lawyers just lawyers? My ignorance was still very much alive and well at the time. Unfortunately, my law school did not have any other tax electives. It wasn't a primary focus of the school because, again, tax is not necessarily, unless you have the extra degree program called an LLM. Typically, law schools don't offer many tax courses. They might have one or two others. And I think there was one more that the school offered, but I couldn't fit it overlapped with a required course that I had, so I didn't get to take it, and it was only offered every other semester, if I remember right. So I said, well, if I'm going to be a tax lawyer, I'm going to have to go get another degree. I started thinking about it after I finished. So that would have been the second half of my second year of law school. And at the time, Elizabeth and I were dating and eventually got engaged. I would hazard a guess she probably thought at the time that I was going to start practicing law to feed our family. But I slowly but surely persuaded her that, well, we can make it on your salary as a teacher, eventual teacher. I said, we can do that, and I'll go back to school. I'm not sure that might have not been in the plan at the time, but nonetheless, in my head, I thought this. I'm not sure if I said this out loud. We'll have to check with her. But I said, in my head, I said, well, if you're ever going to trust me, now would be the time. It's going to work out. It's going to work out.
Putting her to the test early.
Yeah. But, and it did. It did. That was the path that God wanted for me. I did not know that at the time. I was, kind of fumbling along. Obviously, my faith has always been very important to me, and I've always been blessed to believe that God has a path for me. It's scriptural that there is a path, right, for each one of us. And I've always believed there's plenty of examples in the Bible about wayward individuals coming back to their path, and so that's been a theme of my life. And so, even if I didn't know what the path was, I was going to be, somehow I might take a long journey or I might take a short journey. Shorter ones are better, I've found. But I was going to be on that path, and that was what God had from birth to eventual death. That is my path. I've always wanted God to reveal that to me, to reveal that path. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he doesn't on purpose. He doesn't reveal a person's path because he wants them to struggle. Like the struggle is real, the struggle to get there, and because that is the path. So I know that was a long answer to what you asked, but that's how I ended up in tax law. It was an elective. I ended up taking it and loved it. It clicked for me. When I ended up doing the extra 9-month program, the LLM, a lot of the people that were in the program were accountants. And nothing wrong with accountants. Some of one of my closest friends is an accountant. There's nothing wrong with that. And I've got many friends that are accountants. And but they have a certain way of looking at it. I didn't have that, right? Because I was not an accounting major. I was not a finance major. I was a history major in undergrad. So I did not study accounting, if you will. And so I had a different way of looking at it. Now, I had to struggle with getting the numbers, and I took a basic accounting course while I was in the LLM program. I guess you call it auditing. You don't have to get a grade for it. But I was basically like, well, just let me learn. Let me fit this in because I need to learn some basics and refresh some basics from undergrad. And so that helped me grasp the basics, but I didn't have the accountants have a way of narrowing it down to just the numbers when it's really still just the law. And so I was able to think about it a little differently and still do. And that helps a lot with what I do.
So it gives you more context to the scenario than just what the numbers are
That's right.
saying.
Yeah.
So speaking of school, so you did your undergrad at University of Florida.
Yeah, go Gators. That's right. Yep.
That's hard for me to.
I know. I had to do that. I did that just because. But and you and I've shared before, and I almost ended up at Florida State.
Yeah.
So again, one of those moments in life. I ran track in high school, cross country. I did every sport. I did all basically, and there's a whole story behind that, why we did sports. But I was pretty excited to go to Florida State, a couple other schools, and this is pre we had nothing like the internet today. It wasn't like, I can remember my parents getting the first computer in the living room and AOL dial-up. And it wasn't like today.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard for people today to even grasp what I'm talking about. But, people of our generation can definitely realize the recruiting wasn't like it is today. Coaches would call the house and you would do that. And Florida State was a good program at the time. And I remember going there and competing. I forgot the high school meet they had there, but they had the state regionals back then there. And so I was very familiar with Florida State. But I made an offhand comment to someone, and it might have been an assistant coach or something, that I said, well, if the University of Florida will give me a T-shirt, I'd really rather go there. And suddenly I ended up with a package in the mail, and I somehow ended up with a UF track and field T-shirt. I don't know where it came from. Booster, who knows, probably violated NIL. They didn't even have that back then. But nonetheless, it was something like that. And so I ended up going to the University of Florida. I loved it. It was great. And, it was the path that I was supposed to be on. Certainly sports enabled me to get there, but I don't think I eventually walked away from sports by my sophomore year. It was no longer fun. Instead, I found other things, which I'm thankful for, because that put me on the path to where I was at. I met some guys that we refounded one of the oldest fraternities in the country in the University of Florida, Kappa Sigma. We did the fraternity, and we started. We formed out of a Bible study in a Christian coffee shop.
Oh, wow.
People naturally, I'm sure anybody, you say, oh, fraternity, and you think of Animal House. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Christian coffee shop doesn't come to mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, well, and we had a phrase, and that we all still associate. We were redefining the standard.
Okay.
And we said, well, we can do this. We can be part of the Greek culture at one of the largest schools in the country with a national fraternity and still do it the right way, right? And we were able to achieve that. In fact, my roommates were all involved in, one of them's a Presbyterian minister over near Mobile. Another one's a youth pastor in Tampa. We all managed to survive that, as we say, because when we tell people we were in Greek life at the University of Florida, I'm sure yourself included, people naturally assume,
oh boy.
like I said, Animal House. And I'm like, well, no, we did have some antics, but not like what you would think. And there were several of us that were athletes at the time, and we were part of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I told people back then, there was a guy named Danny Werfel, who was our guy. He spoke a lot, and this was the late 90s, early 2000s. Pre-Tim Tebow. Everybody likes to think Tim. I'm like, no, there was a few guys before him. And you as a Florida State guy, I'm sure, like, what are you talking about? No.
I remember Danny Werfel, yes.
Yeah, he's kind of a nemesis for you guys,
right? Yeah. I'm also a Saints fan.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have some love for Danny, too.
All right, that makes sense then. Okay, all right, yeah.
A while after he retired from the NFL, he was in New Orleans doing a lot of good ministry work, I think. So.
Yeah, he ran a group called Desire Street Ministries. A very good friend of mine, again, an accountant, one of my close friends, was his CFO for a while.
Oh, okay.
And
that's cool.
And in fact lives right here in Pensacola.
Oh, that's really neat. Yeah. So yeah, it's when you're in college, there's this great rivalry, but as you get a little removed from that and start looking at people as people. Mm-hmm. Then a Gator and a Seminole can sit down in the same room and have a cordial conversation.
Yeah, not come to blows. Yeah,
and actually be friends.
That's right.
So, yeah. So dig into this Greek life thing for me a little bit, because it is a little bit countercultural, or blows the stereotype a little bit. So what drew you into even wanting to be involved in Greek life? Yeah,
great question. Well, it was a natural fit for what we were already doing. As I said, we were 10, 15 guys. I'm probably missing the number, and I'm sure some of them will see this interview and say, wait, there was a few more of us. But we were roughly in that range. I'll say 15 to be safe. And we were already meeting regularly for Bible study. And which at the University of Florida does run a little counterculture sometimes, right? was unashamed, carried my Bible in my backpack, and we'd read it, but we'd have a Bible study, and a couple guys said, we could do a fraternity different. I have no idea what you're talking about because I was the first in my family to go to college. So all I had in my head was Greek life is probably not that good for me. And I'd already been there a year or so, or maybe 9 months at that point. And I was kind of like, well, no, I didn't do the traditional Greek life the first semester. And I said, well, okay, I'll listen, but I'm going to keep coming to the Bible study and listen. And eventually it took root and it became an idea. And so I said, well, yeah, I think I could do this. This isn't that, right? That being the traditional Greek life. But I said, well, if we're going to do it though, we're not going to do something alternative, right? An alternative Greek. No, we're going to do Greek life just the way it is with everybody else, but we're going to be different. Little did I know that became a theme throughout my life, is that it resonates with me that as a Christian, I shouldn't isolate myself. I should not isolate myself and only hang out with Christians, right? I don't need to do that. I need to witness. To witness, I need to be around other people. Now, I think you have to guard that. You have to put some guardrails in, right? I mean, obviously, I don't need to be, doing keg stands, right, in the Greek life, which is the traditional thing. But that doesn't mean I can't be in the Greek life and say, well, there's a different way. There's something different. We had a fraternity house. We had our fair share of things. We had parties just like the rest. But we said, okay, we're going to do something a little different, right? We're going to do this on our terms, not what is expected. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that was what I was thinking at the time.
Was a desire for your fraternity to sort of be salt and light to the Greek community?
Yeah, that's a great way. That's a better way of saying what I was thinking or what we were doing, and that's what we truly did at the time. Now, I have no idea if they preserved that because we're 25 some odd years down the road now, 26 years. I don't know, somewhere in that range, 26 years down the road. So I don't know if they preserved that. I haven't, but I hope they have, and I hope they've done that. But that was our thinking at the time, and I think we did a pretty good job of capturing that. I heard a musician that my family, we actually went to a concert together, Ben Rector, and he's one of our favorite musicians. I begrudgingly became a fan through my wife and kids. I fought it because I didn't know anything about him. It was out of ignorance. But one of the things that he said, and I heard him say a quote, and I'm really bad about butchering quotes, so I'll try to get it right. But he said that I didn't want to be another Christian musician. I wanted to be a musician who was a Christian. Mm. And that resonated with me, and it stuck with me. And I would say that I think the same way. For example, I don't want to be a Christian lawyer. I want to be a really good lawyer who's a Christian, right? And so the same thing, going back to the Greek life, that was a theme back then even for me. I want to be in Greek life, but a Christian.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I've talked to others who have gone through that Greek life at University of Florida and other places, and there's people that resonated with them as well. Now there's people that certainly Greek life for all the wrong reasons and have done it, and I'd say that's probably the majority of people. But anyway, that's kind of. I did not realize then how important that was for the future, because fast forward, I met Elizabeth through having joined that fraternity. On a whim, I went to an event at another school, the school that Elizabeth was going to, the University of North Florida. I happened to be in town, and they invited alumni, and I said, a couple of guys that I went to the University of Florida with said, hey, we're going, would you like to go? And I said, yeah, I don't have anything to do tonight, I will go. And it just so happened at that event that Elizabeth was there, and we met. And then the rest is all history.
Oh, okay. So she was in a sorority at North Florida?
She was in a sorority, okay. Yep. And she was attending, and we met briefly and then ended up dating and eventually getting engaged and married and all the rest.
Well, that worked out well.
It worked out well. But again, this is back to that theme that I said of God's having a path for all of us. You could not have told me as a younger man that would have happened.
Yeah.
I couldn't have planned that. There's no way for me to have sat down, and I'm a bit of a planner, right? It's what I do for a living. I help people plan their affairs, and I could not have planned that. right? I mean, I still look back and think back, could I have plotted that out? No, there's no way possible for me because I couldn't have made the leaps from all of that, right? I wouldn't have said, well, okay, I'll be here at this time. And no, it would not have. I mean, if you'd have told me as a young man, as a teenager, I'd be in a fraternity, I would have said, no way. My background, the way I grew up, that would not have been even acceptable. I mean, I still remember the conversation with my family. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So.
All those stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you guys do as a fraternity to guard yourself against, the temptations and the pitfalls that are in that community?
Yeah, and I can't say that we did everything right, and we were young men, but I think there was a lot of things that we did. I mean, we did not lose the traditional Bible study beginnings, right? I mean, we did a lot of that still. We kept those events in place, still met in the same coffee shop many times. And, we certainly had influences from people that were not as... We tried to really carefully vet who we allowed in, right? And by the time I graduated, I noticed things changing, right? Because it wasn't the original core group, but that core group pretty much stuck together pretty well through it. That helped preserve a lot of that. What I tell my children as they start to think about college, I tell them, find a good church. Finding a good church, doesn't matter what college you go to. I mean, University of Florida is definitely considered a top party school, or was back then. I don't know what it is today, but the importance was attending a church. One of the churches I attended pretty regularly turned out was one that I think, I could be wrong, one of Elizabeth's grandmothers attended, or was something. I don't remember all the story. Apologies to my mother-in-law, who probably told me 100 times, but there was one that I remember, and several of my fraternity brothers attended, and we did things like spring break. We hiked the Appalachian Trail, not a traditional spring break, right? Now we did occasionally do some things like we went to, I think we went to the Keys one year as a spring break trip. That was a little more traditional spring break, but the Appalachian Trail, I remember. And if he listens to this podcast, which he may, a gentleman and I shared a tent, right? He didn't pack a tent. He was from, I think, South Florida and didn't really know the woods very well. Yeah, it's a little different for him, right?
Yeah.
But I happened to be well prepared because I grew up in a rural environment. So, we did things like that. And I tell people all the time, if you've never hiked the Appalachian Trail and you've never been at the top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere when the sun comes up, there's nothing like it. If you don't believe in God, those are moments that I don't know how you explain that. I'll just leave it at that. Between those moments and the moments, the birth of my children, there's certain moments in life I'm like, if you don't believe in God, I have no idea how do you rationalize or explain that? And I'm sure there's people that can, and they might try, but I'm like, no, there's no other way for me to accept that.
Yeah. The glory of God and all of that stuff, all creation testifying to God. So a young person listening to this is hearing you say, okay, I can do Greek life and still maintain my Christianity.
I would challenge that statement and say it depends. Okay. And I've had this discussion briefly with my own children, particularly my oldest, as he gets closer to those events. But I would say it depends, right? I think it depends. You have to carefully, and I've had this discussion with my own father-in-law who did Greek life at Florida as well, and is one of the Christian heroes that I look up to. If he's listening, that wasn't a plug. I really believe that. But what I would say is you have to be very careful. It's one of those things you have to guard your heart, right? And that is an environment that is traditionally not one that you can, right? It's got some pressures, and so you have to really be careful about. But it comes down to relationships, right? I mean, Greek life was built out of relationships. Like if you go back and study the history of it, which again, the history major, I love history of things. If you go back and look at what it was designed for gentlemen who went to school primarily, right? Back then it was not co-ed. And so generally gentlemen went to school, they would join societies to band together. And some of them were banding together out of like survival, right? And so the Greek life was born out of that. The Greek traditions just gave them things to identify with, right? Not unlike societies like the Freemasons or we could pick. There's a litany of historical societies. What Greek life has become at the universities is become distorted into the quote unquote Animal House style that misses the mark. Yeah. And if that's what you're looking for, sure, you can find that, as opposed to finding a fellowship of godly men and women to the extent of sororities. But if you're looking for that, then that does exist. It's rare, right? And becoming probably increasingly rare, but it does exist. You can do it. I still also believe a young person can be the salt and light in that community. Although if they do it by themselves, I think that is exceptionally challenging. Right. Like I said, I was blessed to have pledge brothers and roommates who were fellow believers, were able to have some accountability. Not saying we were great at it, but there was some accountability in that those relationships. Yeah.
Would you go as far as to say maybe it's dangerous for the majority of folks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it is dangerous. I certainly think it was even dangerous for myself. I think it was dangerous. It is extremely challenging. And again, Matt, this was 25 plus years ago. So I can only imagine what it is like today, because our culture has become that much, I won't say degraded, but I guess that's the best word I can come up with. It's got more challenges today than ever, right? And so I think it is extremely dangerous. But I wouldn't want a young person to hear me to say that all Greek life is bad, because it's not. I don't think so. I think it's exceptionally rare and probably even more challenging today.
Yeah. So go in with eyes wide open, extremely cautious.
Yes. And seek out mentors and advisors, right? I think having older individuals that you can talk to and bounce it off, because you might not be able to see what the dangers are.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you're at Florida, you get your undergrad, then you go to law school.
Yeah, which was a complete happenstance. I was supposed to be a history major. Well, I was a history major. I was supposed to get a PhD in history. That was the path. And sometimes I do miss that. I do still enjoy the academics of that, right? But
where did the passion for history come from?
That's a great question. I don't know. I really don't. Other than growing up, my family's an old Florida family. We've been here before, best I can tell from the research, before it was a state.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a 6th generation Floridian, at least by the counts we've done, genealogy. So that would make my children 7th generation. They're all born in Florida. With the exception of the 3 years of law school, I've lived my whole life in Florida. And so I got into studying history, and one of my professors, he's deceased, Michael Gannon at Florida. He was a preeminent professor on Florida history. He and I started sharing stories, and he was fascinated by that. So he helped me do some research in my family history and the archives, and we started doing that. And so I was really into that. I was going to do a PhD in either Florida history or Southern history, depending on what path I was going to take. And I was having a conversation with my own grandfather once, and he said, well, I don't think that will provide a great living. It'd be honorable, but you may want to think about that. And so he shared with me some information, and I considered that. At the time, PhD job opportunities were scarce, and they probably still are for history. I mean, I wasn't going to be teaching at the University of Florida or Florida State. I was going to be teaching at South Dakota State or somewhere, not to offend any of those places, but not necessarily where I wanted to be in the country. In other words, a young history professor was getting, very, very, remote jobs. There weren't a lot at the time. So I said, well, what am I going to do? I don't know. And blessed to be introduced to a lawyer that had represented my family in some stuff, and I said, well, maybe, and he was a judge at the time, and I spent some time with him. He's now deceased, and he was really good friends with my grandfather. And so I said, well, I think I'll go to law school. And that was basically the last semester or two of I can't remember exactly when. Definitely towards the end. Most law schools were full at the time, and so I took the LSAT kind of last minute. Got into different schools, and was blessed to get a scholarship where I went, and so that's why I ended up in Arkansas for 3 years. They gave me a scholarship and enjoyed it, and would have probably stayed there and practiced. But it wasn't on my path. That wasn't what God wanted. It was a beautiful state. Loved everything about it. Unfortunately, haven't been back, but at some point I want to take the kids and go and visit, right? Because they haven't really seen it. Really enjoyed that place.
Was this at the University of Arkansas?
So yeah, the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, which is downtown Little Rock. The med school and law school are there. They have a law school campus in Fayetteville too. Arkansas their university system is radically different than Florida. It's all the University of Arkansas at a city. So University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, University of Arkansas at Little Rock, University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, a couple other places too. And so it's all part of that umbrella system. The law school was in Little Rock, and spent 3 years there. It was great. But I started to feel eventually this pull back to Florida. And Elizabeth and I talked about it and realized, don't really want to live in Arkansas. We will if that's what God wants for us. But that pull back to Florida, I kind of eventually realized that's where and then once I applied, so the LLM and tax program, there's only 3 real big programs. There's several others, but the big ones are NYU, which I got into, Florida, and Georgetown. Those are the big 3. Then there's probably 20 or so other ones, and including Miami. And I got into Miami quickly, and that was a safe one, but that was pretty expensive. Then got into all 3 of the top 3 programs. And I realized, well, one, we could not afford New York on her salary. I was like, that's not going to work. But Florida was very affordable because they were going to, they offered me obviously in-state tuition. And I realized, okay, we actually lived in Jacksonville, and I was working at the time and driving down to Gainesville. And so I would drive a couple of days and take because you could get classes on 1 or 2 days a week, and I was doing that. And so once I got into Florida and Miami, I realized Florida was where I was coming back from Arkansas. I said, yeah, I'm not meant to stay here. Although I think it would have been fine. It was a great place.
Yeah. I hear great things about it.
Yeah.
We have some friends there that have loved it. So
yeah, Elizabeth's college roommate lives there now with her husband and I think 3 kids, and that's why I said, well, I think we need to go back and visit because it'd be neat to see and show the kids because they know about it.
Yeah.
But they're like, they have no concept of it.
That'd be a great trip. Yeah. So you graduate from law school, you go to Jacksonville, you're working as an attorney in Jacksonville.
Yeah. Yeah. Took the bar exam, graduated law school, took the bar exam, got married 2 weeks after. Went on a honeymoon and started the LLM program and kind of working part-time as an attorney and not doing a ton because I was focused on the schoolwork. I mean, I wasn't working not nearly full-time. And then took a full-time job after the LLM program with a firm in downtown Jacksonville, 30 some odd floors up. Off the ground.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
Nice view from up there.
Yeah, it was a nice view. Well, I didn't have the nice view. My first office was like a closet. No windows, nothing. They didn't even have room for me. And then eventually I got a little office about the width of this chair with a window. And I thought, man, I've made it. Yeah. I got a window.
I have arrived.
Little did I know professionally how little I knew then.
That's funny.
There was another associate attorney who was a couple years older than me. And he and I were both tax attorneys. And so it was rare that a firm would have that many tax attorneys, but they were a very old Jacksonville firm. They're no more. They split up many times and went out of business, but I still occasionally see or keep up with some folks that were there. Left there and went to a smaller firm and spent...
Still in Jacksonville,
and spent approximately 8 years with that firm. Enjoyed it, but decided to move on from that firm briefly to another firm in Jacksonville. Realized when I did that wasn't the right move. And it was like, well, wait a minute. I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here.
What was giving you that indication?
Just was really unsettled. I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. Obviously, my profession, there's certain things I can't talk about, right? The confidentiality, so forth. But there was just an unsettled feeling. And so around that time, the move to Pensacola became front and center. And so we packed up and moved to Pensacola.
For the job specifically? Was there a desire for Pensacola before that, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was some desire on my part to be in a smaller environment, and I think Elizabeth as well. I'm not 100% certain of that, because I literally came home and I said, I think we should do this. And we did it. And so, I mean, we obviously talked about it, but I think there was a desire. There's certainly... And I have to be careful because this is dangerous, right? But hindsight, I know that this was the path, right? I know it for family life. Jacksonville's a big city. A huge city. And I know the opportunities. And at the time, we had Robert and Emma, right, our two oldest. We had we had them, and Elizabeth was actually pregnant with Abby. Abby was delivered in Jacksonville while we were bridging back and forth.
Oh, wow.
I was driving back and forth from Pensacola every other week. This is all before remote working and nothing like we have today. This was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That path opened up, and I moved here to become a partner in a local firm here on a handshake. I did not what I would ever advise a client, right? We shook hands. I shook hands with the managing partner, and I said, I'll come, and we worked that out. That was the right move at the time for my family, looking back, because I realized the big city, I probably would not have seen my kids grow up the way I did here.
Yeah.
I mean, here I live, less than 10 minutes from my office. I mean, I've made most of my kids' events. I'm able to see them because it is a demanding profession. It does require it's a very, very time-consuming profession to do it properly and to do it well. And so that experience, I did not know that then. I would literally wake up and look in the mirror and say, all right, God, you sure this is what we're supposed to do? Because I'm not sure now. I'm really not sure. And there were a couple times after, if I'm being perfectly honest, after we did that, I really questioned it. I really questioned, especially the first 6 months or so. Because, I mean, I had a built-in practice. I was a partner in a law firm in Jacksonville. I had, family built-in network for client referrals. And it would have probably worked out professionally, but I'm not so sure personally on a family level how that obviously unknown, right? But I did see signs that would be potentially problematic, right? When you work in a city and you're 30 floors up, it takes 15 minutes just to get out of the building and in your car, right? And get on the highway. Take any big city, Atlanta, Miami, Jacksonville, any of these cities, you're going, that process of going down, getting in the garage, getting in your car and getting out is 15 minutes. Well, do that twice a day, 15 minutes in, 15 minutes, that's 30 minutes on your day, right? And so when you start calculating that, plus the commute times and everything else, well, that's a lot of time that you're not attending, soccer practice or ballet or whatever your kids are into, or just being home, being present. There were many times where I would have to wait out, and I'm sure Elizabeth can tell you many more stories, where I'd have to wait out traffic and I'd miss dinner, or I'd have to leave early and miss, breakfast, wake up, whatever. And so looking back, that definitely was God looking out for me and saying, okay, I know what you want. I know what's best for you if you'll just obey me and do this. And that was a tough one. If I'm being perfectly honest, that was a tough decision. Probably one of the toughest decisions I've ever made in my life. And I'm sure if my family were all sitting around, both sides, in-laws and my family, they probably were all thinking, what are y'all doing?
Hard to leave family, for sure.
Yeah.
We're thankful for the same reasons we came from Atlanta to here.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you get it.
Yeah. Living in the northern suburbs of Atlanta, commuting down.
Sure.
Best case scenario, the commute's 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, it was 2 hours to get home.
So you totally get it. Yeah, you totally know what I'm saying. But as a man, I'm sure you get this, and as a leader of your home, it's very easy to say, I need this. I need to be in a big city. I need this job this way. I need to, for me, I had a what amounted to a corner office with instead of being the size of this chair, it's probably bigger than this room with a window view of the river and the city.
Yeah.
I have arrived.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, literally, that's what, and I'm sitting there going, have I?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Hard to give that stuff up. There's certainly the ego stuff that goes along with it. And, but then, when you look at your family and your kids and you're like, okay, these guys are way more valuable than this career achievement.
100%. Well, they're the ones that'll take care of you. They're the ones that'll, or hopefully, be in your life when all that's gone. But I will say this about Pensacola and Northwest Florida. I'm still doing what I do at the same high level. Took a little bit longer to establish a base here, but for me professionally, it wasn't any different.
I guess that's kind of the moral, right? Like the world will tell you have to be in the tall building with the great view, and God can use you wherever he takes you.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, which be careful about what the world tells you. And be careful about listening. You referenced earlier in this interview or whatever this thing is.
It's a conversation.
Conversation. I don't know what to call it, but it doesn't feel like an interview. So for what it's worth. But you referenced the concept of like when we're talking about Greek life and young people, and I'd say that'd be another thing I'd say, and I tell this to my children: be careful about what the world tells you. They'll tell you one thing, and that's going to take you off the path that God has for you.
Yeah.
It might take you far, far off the path.
Yeah.
God will bring you back, but why go far afield and take all that time and pain sometimes to get back?
Yeah, that's good. Well, I know we've been blessed here in multiple ways, especially around education and Trinitas and the Christian community here. I know that my kids are the fruit that they're bearing here. I don't think we would have had that in Atlanta. We didn't even know what classical Christian education was really until we came here. So
same.
Just as you said, walking in obedience or making the decisions we think God's leading us to make, and He's blessed us greatly along the way. So
yeah, no doubt. I mean, we had the same. And you and I have shared this before. We had similar paths in that respect. We didn't know what classical Christian we kind of had heard about it, I guess. Elizabeth may have heard more than I had. I certainly didn't know what it was. And I was probably the most resistant to it, if I'm being perfectly honest about it. But we were blessed to find Trinitas in this community, and now I can't imagine anything different for my children.
Yeah.
Being honest, it's a struggle sometimes. There's been moments of doubt even related to that. It's like, because both of us were publicly educated, and that was all we knew, of course. But I would also, not to get on a philosophical debate about education, but I think it's different now, right? The public education of our youth, not that it was great, but it was totally different than what it was now, at least in public school back then. Like occasionally, there'd be a public school teacher who also went to church with us or was a Sunday school teacher, and so there was still that woven fabric, right? It was still there. And I think that's largely somewhat been eroded. But the classical Christian model fit with what we wanted for our children, and has been really good to us in the sense that we can see the fruit that is there, born out of that. And I think that it leads to like-minded relationships, such as your family and other families that we've met and interacted with, and that are going in the similar, maybe not the same direction, but similar direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the institution of public education wasn't as hostile to a Christian worldview when we were growing up. Still wasn't good. They weren't partnering with my parents in my discipleship.
Sure.
Or trying to instill in me a love for God and for neighbor. So still wasn't good, but even worse now, I would imagine.
Yeah,
so.
I think so. I mean, you're right. That's a great way to put it. They weren't partnering. They weren't as antagonistic as I view it today, right? And we tried. And to be perfectly honest, we tried the public school system with our oldest kids. We started them in that and realized, oh wait, you're not helping us with the message we're conveying.
Yeah.
And so that is a challenge. That is something that I see in lots of institutions, not just necessarily the education system, but just this idea that we're going to be antagonistic to a Christian worldview.
Yeah. I imagine in your profession, you encounter that quite a bit.
I will be careful here. Yes, I think so. I think there are several both lawyers and groups that I've found that are supportive of that and not antagonistic. But I think it is a battlefield. Certainly, I think it is a battlefield. But I would say that everywhere is. I mean, it's not just public education. It's not just the legal field. It's everywhere. It's spiritual warfare is very, very real.
Yeah,
it's very real.
Yeah. So you finish the LLM. You and Elizabeth get married before you start that program?
Yes.
At the end of law school.
2 weeks after the bar exam.
Okay. And you met when you were still in undergrad?
No, we met when I was in law school.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
But that was part of the fraternity connection?
Yeah, so I was an alumni of the fraternity and just happened to be attending an event as an alumni.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So regularly, alumni are regularly invited to things. I get invited to ones here all the time. I don't go because I don't have time. But alumni throughout the country are regularly invited.
I got you.
Yeah. So I just happened to accept that invitation that night.
Yeah. So you were at law school in Arkansas and you were just back here for visiting or whatever?
I was just random visit back home and just happened to attend an event that one time. I don't even remember. Like I said, it was just a random invitation. There was nothing special about it that I could related to the invitation.
What do you remember about Elizabeth the first time that you saw her?
Good question. I remember distinctly, I have got to talk to her. I have got to figure out a way to talk to her.
And how did you do that?
I just walked up to her.
Yeah.
I'm pretty bold like that. I just walked up and said, we had a fairly brief conversation. And then I used a little bit of trickery because I realized I didn't ask for her number. I was an idiot and forgot to ask for the number. And so I had to lean on someone that knew her to get me the number. And that someone was a fellow fraternity brother at that university. And I knew him. And I said, hey, I need a number from someone. And he was suspicious because apparently she didn't give her number out to people. But I kind of told a white lie. It was not a white lie. It was a lie. I said, yeah, well, I think she gave it to me.
I just lost it.
Yeah. And
Remind me what it is again.
Yeah. And he was kind enough to indulge me and went up to her, and I think in the library or somewhere, and said, do you remember this Robert Jones guy? And she did, thankfully. He says you gave her the number. And she said, well, no, I didn't. But she gave it to him anyway. And I called her and I said, can we go on a date in a week or two? I forgot when I was going to be back. And we went on our first date to a restaurant that is no longer in business. Although we did find a location. We literally almost drove off the road when we saw it in Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge, I think. We were on vacation with the kids and we saw it and we were like, oh my goodness, that's where we ate. Da, da, da. And, the kids were like, what are you talking about?
That's cool.
It was
What was the restaurant?
Johnny Carino's.
Oh, okay.
It's an Italian restaurant, like Olive Garden, but obviously holds a special place for Elizabeth and I.
Yeah,
so we were pleased. We didn't stop at that one because we had other plans, but I know one exists at least.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So you guys are long distance, I guess, right?
Yeah, we managed to pull it off a long distance, and even longer distance because Elizabeth went on she did a semester abroad in between there. We pulled that off too, and did the long distance thing, even longer distance, while she was in France, I think, Europe. Yeah, she was in France. She was studying in France, Poitiers, France. I think that was the city.
So how did you pull off the long distance relationship?
I would say, totally a God thing. God just made it work, and it was good practice for the life we lead now.
Oh, in what way?
In that it requires scheduling, being intentional with your time. As I said, my profession demands an enormous amount of my time, right, and commitments. And she's been along for the ride the whole way, so she understands that, and we just made it work.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed that I have a wife that is extremely confident on her own.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm in court or I'm somewhere or she can handle it. Right. And I trust the decisions she makes. And so we had a lot of practice at that. Little did we know that's what it would look like for the 20 years of my career and our marriage. But that God set us up on that path and said, okay, this is what it's going to be like. There may be distances where you are far apart for a little while.
Yeah.
And as I said, I chose not to go into the trial work where it would have been even more demanding, right? Where it would have been even more, but because I didn't like that. I didn't like being apart even then, but we made it work because it was a necessity, but we were able to pull that off
temporarily.
Yeah. And that was there was no Zoom, FaceTime, none of that stuff today, right?
Yeah.
But it was
your cell phone with your after hours minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Unlimited after 9 o'clock.
That's right. Yeah. I remember those days. Yeah. Old flip phone. It was a flip phone, if I remember right. I think I had a Motorola flip phone. Anyway.
You're living the good life.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we had talked before, too, about the trust that's required there for that relationship, obviously between husband and wife in general, but also given your line of work. And
Yeah, it does. Obviously, there's things that the attorney-client privilege prevents me from sharing. There's things that I wouldn't share that could obviously put my wife in harm's way in terms of having to testify and talk about. And so there has to be that trust that she doesn't ask me about my business, and I'm thankful because I couldn't tell her, right? And so some of that is just a level of trust. I'm very thankful that she does trust. That's important to make it work.
Yeah. Even the trust that you're out with the client, like you say you are, and,
Yeah.
there are stereotypes about attorneys too, and
oh yeah, there's stereotypes and jokes, and I've heard them all. But yeah, and obviously now with teenagers, Life 360, it's fascinating because I'm on there too, and I'm like, okay, because I'm a little bit of a naive about technology, and Elizabeth will say, "Oh, you went to so and so," and I'm like, "Yep, I sure did. How'd you know that?" And then I realized, "Oh, it's on there."
That's funny.
Yep.
So, Robert, as much as you can tell me, what does a typical day for you look like?
Oh gosh, there is no typical day. I would tell you there is no typical day. There's obviously days where I've planned things and things are on the calendar, but even those get changed radically. I sometimes pity my staff, particularly my scheduler, the person that schedules my legal assistant. She has a very difficult job, and that probably has one of the highest turnovers, frankly, of the people on my staff, because it's easy to burn out in that job. Because sometimes you got to move all sorts of things around. Right. And the clientele that I deal with are, CEOs of companies and, boards of companies. And so it's not easy to tell someone in those positions, hey, this has to move. We got to move this, or and juggling all that. It's there is no typical day. I think, if you ask my kids, they would say that I sit at a desk behind a computer and answer the phone and send emails.
Sounds like my job.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. And largely that is also, one, it's driven by the attorney-client privilege. They can't know some things. And two, I shield them from a lot of it. I tell people, and my kids have heard me say this, people pay me for their problems to be my problems, right? They want me to solve their problem. And so obviously I don't want my kids to know those problems, right? Those are heavy burdens to carry. My older kids that participate in mock trial, they're getting they kind of see a little bit of it and they kind of understand. In fact, Emma was telling me on the ride home last night about the mock trial, and I said, do you want to be a lawyer? Because you got some really good skills. And she says, no, not really. I said, why? And she goes, I don't know that I want someone's life in my hands. And I said, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, both, criminal, you're dealing with, potential jail. And she said, civil, you're dealing with, money. And she said, that's important. And I thought that was we had an interesting conversation about that. And so, yeah, so I wish I could tell you there's a typical day. I mean, there's certainly, some in 20 years of practicing, there's certainly some tendencies, right? But I tell people, don't be a lawyer if you don't like to read and write. It's an intense amount of reading and writing, and you have to read and synthesize quickly. Right.
This is like case law and that sort of thing?
Case law, contracts. I mean, right now, for example, I got a 35-page contract that I've got to read by, what's today? Tuesday? By the end of the week. There's things like that. There's documents. I mean, sometimes you'll get a 100-page document that you got to read through.
Oof.
And you got to read through it quickly. You might only have an hour to read it.
And can't miss.
Something.
Yeah.
Misses can be extremely punitive.
Yeah.
So that ability, I tell people all the time, if you don't like to read, certainly and write, don't go into the legal field.
Yeah.
I had nobody warned me of that, but I warned I teach at UWF. I'm an adjunct professor there, and usually every spring semester. I try not to do it every semester because that's one night away from my family, but Elizabeth indulges me because she knows I like to teach. Right? That gets the bug with being a history professor a little bit out of my system.
There you go.
But I've taught law school. I taught law school in Jacksonville, and this allows me. We don't have a law school nearby, so UWF allows me to teach an undergrad 4,000 level course. But I tell my students, you better like to read and write, or this profession will eat you up.
Yeah.
Which, again, a lot of our Trinitas students that's why mock trial is so successful so quickly, is because they get it.
Yeah.
I mean, they are, some of them are phenomenally better than some of my college students.
Yeah. They've been well trained in that regard, for sure.
Yeah.
So the buzz of the day, of course, is AI. Do you see that helping with your job? Is it starting to come in?
Yes. In fact, I just did a CLE on AI to learn a bit. I'm starting to feel like a little bit of a dinosaur, and I'm not that old, but I tell people I was the last class to take the bar exam by paper only, I think, something around there.
Oh.
So shortly after that, they started going more electronic. I think they may have allowed computers at the time. I can't remember, but I'm sure it was early 2000s when they started switching over, and then now it's all electronic, I understand. So I'm not sure about all the dates there, but back when I was there, I mean, I took the bar exam paper, blue books, as they said. And certainly all my exams in law school were by blue book. No one was allowed to use a computer. Mm-hmm. And, AI has come along and just absolutely changed the way people do my profession, right? The way people practice. And we're required to get up to speed on it, right? And so we have whole policies about it. We had to put it in our engagement letter when a client hires us. Certain AI violates client confidentiality, right? So you're forbidden from uploading into an AI platform whereby AI could take the client names and regurgitate them or use them. So you can't use it from that perspective. But there are AI platforms and tools that do help us as lawyers. But there's a controversy. A lot of lawyers aren't checking, and they're putting it in the public space, filing documents with the court cases that are made up. I mean, you can search for these things and read about them. So it is challenging, but it's certainly, it like any other tool, could be useful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be.
Yeah. My experience so far with it is you still have to know what you're talking about when you're talking to it. Because
That's fair. Yeah.
it just says everything so confidently as fact. And you have to be able to discern if that is or isn't.
Yeah, I've had clients use it and push back against advice we give. Right, clients will use it, and I'm like, "Well, where'd you get that?" And I can usually tell where they got it, and then I look into it deeper, and I'm like, "No, it's wrong." And I've had to actually say that. I'm like, "No, it's wrong because." So I find that AI is changing. It's changing people's discourse with, certainly in our profession with attorneys, because it's allowing them to be more argumentative, as opposed to trusting the advice that we're giving.
Yeah.
And so I spend time arguing with the actual clients about it.
That's interesting. Yeah. So in some ways, it's making your job harder.
Yes, I would say that in some ways, yes. Yeah. And other ways, it is somewhat useful. It does allow for synthesizing information and creating documents faster.
Yeah. It does seem like when you have a 100-page document to read, that it would be helpful to have it at least peruse it first and maybe point out areas to look at.
Yeah, but then you're trusting that it didn't miss something.
Right.
Which is dangerous too.
Doesn't alleviate you of your responsibility to do it, but yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah, this landscape is fascinating. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out for sure.
Yeah.
So Robert, help me understand even more like what you do as a tax attorney. So people probably think when they hear that, maybe they associate it closely with an accountant.
Yeah, great question. I mean, certainly there's a lot of different avenues that I can pursue as a tax attorney. So, for example, a lot of what I do is I do a fair amount of estate planning, wills and trust for taxable estates, which is generally $15 million and $30 million for a husband and wife. And so I do a lot of planning around higher net worth clients, people that are above that threshold. I'm blessed with a lot of clients in that space. I also do a lot of transactional work for clients that buy and sell their businesses in taxable scenarios. Typically, that's, I've done things north of 100 million. I've done things, smaller than that, certainly, but that allows me to work with the accountants when they sell those businesses. As I said, I do some tax court cases, right? Actual litigation against the IRS. So we'll I've got a couple cases pending where we'll file suit against the IRS. I don't do a lot of those unless the dollar amounts are fairly large, right? There are tax attorneys that do, 1040 disputes, right, for CPAs, but I'll a lot of times I'll advise CPAs when so CPAs accountants will call wanting to take certain positions on tax returns, and they'll want an opinion from someone like me to say, okay, if the IRS disagrees, I need someone to advocate that we're right, and so we'll do that. The beauty of being a lawyer, and it's dangerous, you got to be careful, right? You're not supposed to practice if you don't you're not competent. But most lawyers, you're free to practice law in any area. If I want to go and handle a divorce case, not that I philosophically never wanted to do those, but I could. Right, I passed the bar. I can go into any court that I'm admitted in Florida, because that's where I passed it. I can go into federal court and I can handle a case. If I wanted to try a criminal case, I could. I'd pity the person that hired me, because I don't know. But as a tax lawyer, most people, right or wrong, assume that some people assume I'm just like a CPA. Mm-hmm. Well, no, I'll represent CPAs, right? Particularly if they get in trouble or they don't know what they're doing or they've gotten in a bad position, I'll do that. I do a lot of planning, helping clients plan large transactions, right? So, for example, I might help a client as opposed to doing a simple sale of their business. I might help them restructure it into a more complicated structure because it'll save them a couple $1 million. And so, generally those type of transactions, I do like to do those. But But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
It's tough for people that aren't in the industry. I don't
Right.
have an elevator speech.
Yeah.
There's not. And I depend wholly on referrals. I don't have to advertise. I'm blessed. There's no you're never going to see me on a billboard. Despite, my youngest Harper saying, "Daddy, when are you going to be on a bus?" And I was like, never. I think it was Harper. Maybe it was Abby. I don't know. One of them. But that's not going to happen.
There's some restrictions around that for
attorneys
100%.
too,
right?
Yeah, you have to submit ads. The bar has to approve them, and you pay a fee for them to look at it. There's a whole process. You can't just randomly advertise.
Mm-hmm. Now, do people in your space typically try to advertise, or is most of it word of mouth?
I don't know for certain that there's no one, but I don't think anyone advertises. It's word of mouth.
Yeah.
And it's, again, when you're working with ultra high net worth and high net worth clients, they all, not all, but their circles overlap, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's the country club set, the private jet set, and one of them mentions to one, "This is my guy, you should talk to him." Mm-hmm. It's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
And then by the token, though, it's also easily to make a mistake. By mistake, not just mistake in practice of law, but just I don't like your politics. I don't like this. I don't like that. And so I'm very careful about that. I rarely, some people know I'm not ashamed but I also very careful about, you're not going to see me on TikTok or anything else. This is about the biggest step that I've taken in terms of social media.
So how do you feel about President Trump? Good, you passed.
No comment.
So those guys aren't riding and looking at the buses. It's
no, they're not picking their lawyer based on a billboard.
Yeah.
That's a whole industry, and I'm not criticizing. They've figured out that's what works for them, and that's their business model. And the bar has eventually allowed it. It used to be you couldn't advertise. I think in the 70s, 1974, Florida was on the leading edge of that. Florida was one of the Supreme Court cases came out of Florida, out of the prohibition of advertising.
Oh, okay.
And so ever since then, we've had advertising. I think it's in every state.
Well, I have another friend that's an attorney that I've done her website for a while, and I knew there were restrictions about even like images we could use and some of that. We didn't get too deep into all of it, but
yeah, you have to be really careful. I served for 3 years on our local grievance committee, and there's a whole set of ethics rules about what you can and can't do. The bar has published pretty detailed path. It's pretty easy. All you got to do is ask them, and they'll tell you what you can and can't do.
Yeah, they're not trying to keep it secret, huh?
No.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's to protect the public. It's really driven out of protection of the public.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in what you do, are you ever dealing with criminal cases? I assume that.
No, that is not my specialty. There are criminal tax cases. Mm-hmm. I generally refer them out, despite having gotten an A in tax fraud in the LLM program. I generally refer them to, actually, my former professor. He practices in the Orlando area.
Okay.
He was an adjunct professor, much like I adjunct right now, and he taught tax fraud, and I generally send them to him or someone like him, just because it's a specialty set. Criminal tax is a special subset, and I just I know enough just to recognize it, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna refer this out.
What could get someone into a criminal situation related to taxes?
Failure to pay, failure to file. The IRS has rules on that.
Eventually just escalates into...
Yeah, there's a lot of others. Lying on your tax return, committing perjury, right? When you sign them, there's a little thing that says, I signed this under penalty of perjury. So, those sort of things can get one in trouble.
Yeah.
They generally frown upon that.
Well, that's helpful. That's it. I find it fascinating. I'm sure we could talk on and on about that, but I do want to go back to younger Robert.
Okay. Younger being me or my young son? Sorry, I couldn't help that one.
Yes, Robert the Third.
Yeah.
I know Elizabeth also refers to you as husband Robert.
Yeah.
And then Robert the Fourth is kid Robert.
Yeah, we had to change that up a little bit because we realized we used to call him Little Robert, and he's not so little anymore.
Yeah.
He's probably, if not as big as me, or getting pretty close.
Yeah. Well, let me say in that regard, your family has been so supportive of this podcast. Some of my biggest encouragers, and
they love watching it. We'll see if the views go down because I'm on it.
I know they're excited for you to be on.
They were.
But I know you guys have even done family nights around it and stuff. So just thanks for all the encouragement.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. You've got some interesting guests. Like I said, apologies if the views go down now. It's on you for selecting the content here.
They really only have one direction to go, so.
Fair enough.
But yeah, tell me about young Robert the Third, husband Robert, as a young kid.
Okay, we're going that far back. All right. I grew up outside the outskirts of Jacksonville. I always like to say between Lake City and Jacksonville. So just head I-10 east. The kids think this is fascinating, but off of US 90, which runs through Pensacola too, off US 90, as you head into Jacksonville, there is a Jones Road. And again, my family's been in Florida for many, many generations, and that was the old road that led to the dairy. My family had dairy farms. And so growing up, it was a pretty rural environment growing up. I mean, now Jacksonville's expanded. If you know anything about it, Jacksonville's, largely 4 counties. It's not unlike Atlanta, where you're from, spent some time. It spans bigger than just one county. I mean, I know that's the official city limits, but it's huge, sprawling metropolis. And but back then it was not. If you go back 40 plus years, I won't tell the exact age, but it was different. And so I can remember stories, my mom getting calling my dad, hey, the cows are eating the rose bushes. You look out the back window and the cows have gotten through the fence and they're eating all the roses because they were munchy. Those tasted better than the grass. And my family would have, I remember, New Year's parties and various holiday parties, Christmas Eves in dairy barns. They would potluck style. There'd be, everybody was related. So it was all relatives, and stuff, friends, stuff like that. I can remember visiting, we'd go to church with my aunts or uncles. There was a Jones Road Baptist Church. It was a single aisle white church, and I had an aunt that a long time member of that church until she passed away. And so, largely a rural agrarian background, right? We spent a lot of time with cousins. Everybody lived nearby, aunts, uncles. You'd go from one house to the next. You didn't really, there weren't, I won't say there weren't a lot of rules in that sense, but you didn't need the rules, right? The rules were just survive.
Yeah.
Basically.
A lot of freedom to roam.
A lot of freedom, way more freedom. I mean, it was there were dirt roads and you could walk places, right? And not worry about it. And everybody knew who your family was or who you were, and so there was that. But yeah, it was a great way to grow up.
Did you do work on the farms?
We all had work to do. You always had work to do. They sold, I remember distinctly, I don't remember the exact year, but they sold the dairy business when I was a younger version of me. I probably could look it up, but I don't remember the exact year, but I remember them selling the cows and selling it off. I think I remember the history right. My family will correct me if I'm not right, but I think my grandfather was the one that really just didn't want to be a dairy farmer. Him and his brother did not want to do that anymore, and so they slowly wound it down. But yeah, I mean, you had chores, I mean, they would, it was nothing like, the only way you got out of chores around that environment was sports. So my brother and I and my cousins, we played every sport imaginable, right? Because you wanted to avoid whatever chores the farm had for you, right? And so you would, but it was like I said, it was a great environment.
It's fun to grow up in that kind of.
Yeah, a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
A lot of freedom. And it's funny because my kids grew up in a neighborhood. We live in a neighborhood now, and it's different.
Yeah.
I find myself missing that environment.
Yeah.
In fact, if you know anybody that's got some land for sale, I'm interested.
Okay.
Yeah, just because I miss that. Right?
Yeah. It make your commute a little longer, I think, but.
Yeah, that's true.
Still not a Jacksonville commute.
Still not a Jacksonville commute.
Yeah.
That's true.
So all sports, was there one that stood out as your favorite?
No, I didn't really have a favorite. I mean, I just did them all. I mean, I think I was blessed. I could run really fast. I was blessed with that. But I mean, I did everything from high school football to, you name it, we played it. Baseball, track, cross country. I didn't swim. I did not swim. But yeah, I mean, whatever sport got me through each season to play. Yeah. So I did not have to work after school or before school.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, got practice.
It's a good strategy.
Yeah, it worked out well in that sense. Didn't get you out of the summer with jobs, but
yeah,
it worked in that sense.
Do you have a memory or two that's your favorite from childhood?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think about that one for a minute. I mean, I've got lots of memories. Favorite, it's tough because I've never been one to do like list of favorites, because like if I think of one, I'll think of another, and then and but I would have to say, so on my family's land there was a little pond, and there were several lakes around there that people had dug, and I love to fish. I still love to fish. I don't get to do it. In fact, if you go in my law office, I've got mounted fish on the wall.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, mainly because I think Elizabeth doesn't let me keep them at home. But actually, edit that part out. Cut that part out.
What fish do you have there?
Oh, a bunch of largemouth bass.
Okay.
Speckled perch or crappie, as they call it.
What's your biggest bass that you've got mounted?
About 10.6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I
That's
got some
very
big
impressive.
ones. Yeah, I got some pretty good ones. Yeah, I got some good ones. Got a smallmouth bass up there, too, that I caught up in, like, Tennessee or somewhere. I don't remember where I caught that one, actually. I'd have to go back and look. It's probably written on the back.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I would love to fish, though. Love to fish. And so if I had to look back at my fondest memories, it was fishing as a child. And I miss that as an adult. I don't fish nearly enough. Robert and I took a fishing trip in the Keys. He and I did that. But we live right next to the water, and I hardly ever fish.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I could go out my office door downtown, and the water's right there with all the sport fishing boats and stuff. Yeah. And I take it for granted.
Sounds like you need a boat in the marina.
No, I need a friend with a boat.
Yeah.
I don't need a boat myself. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, fishing definitely. If I had to pick, I mean, it's always some of my fondest memories as a child were fishing. And again, because we had large freedom, I mean, I would just wander after school. I'd wander down, you'd find me fishing, right? And that's where my family always knew, oh, he's probably fishing. I did that all the time. In fact, if someone would have told me that I could make a living fishing, I probably would have done that. But no one told me
Nobody told you?
Nobody told me, so it's probably best. I'm sure my wife appreciates, my kids appreciate that no one told me that.
Yeah.
But I understand there is people that do that.
Yeah.
But that was not for me. So that was probably that would probably be my fondest memories. I mean, I got so many fishing stories. I can remember an uncle. He had a catfish pond, and he used to grow watermelons and all sorts of things. But we would go pick them. We would help them, and he taught me how to clean a catfish by catching the catfish, and there was a nail on the back wall of his barn, and you'd take it's a little graphic, but you'd take the catfish and sling them under the nail, and then you'd pull the skin off, and then you'd fry them and eat them. And that's what we did.
That works.
It worked.
We just had medieval day at Trinitas, and they were teaching the kids how to clean fish.
They were. I missed it. Sadly, I missed it again. I've done medieval day a few times with the other kids. In fact, roasted a pig with Tony Zepp and Wes Todd.
Oh, yes.
2 a.m. We were spitfiring the pig. One of my fondest memories at the school.
Yeah.
So I was sad to miss it this year, but professional duties, I had a court-ordered mediation. So, all right. So that was the good memory. Now, sad memory from childhood? or when I was a teenager, I had an uncle that passed away, my dad's younger brother. And he passed away from leukemia, and that was I remember that being very, very sad. That was a challenge for the whole family. It definitely changed the dynamics of our family. That would have been sad. And the only thing coupled close to that I could ever consider close to that was in law school. My grandmother passed, my mom's mom. And again, we were all very close, and my mom's mom used to watch us after school and take care of us. And I remember I flew back for that funeral, and I remember just being extraordinarily sad at that funeral. Those are the two events I would say are probably the two saddest memories I can think of.
Hard to deal with those kind of losses.
Yeah, those were tough. But and I've dealt with other funerals. Obviously, I had other family members die, but those two stood out for me. But I remember one of my great uncle's funerals. My grandmother on my dad's side brother, he died. And that was a few years later. But the pastor that gave that funeral said something, and I'll never forget. He said, "Don't be sad." He said, because the particular uncle, he said, he's waiting in heaven for all you to get there. He wanted everyone to know that he'd see you again. And it stuck with me because I've been to funerals, non-family members, but in particular that stand out were not Christians. And if you've ever been to one of those funerals, as a Christian, it deeply saddens one. Not close to the people, but it in those circumstances, I'm thinking, wow, this is different. This is different, and this is why, right? Because you didn't know the Lord, and those I would say are sad for a different reason, right? So those aren't personally sad necessarily. I don't personally know them well enough, other than being a fellow human being and feeling sad that they're disconnected, and that I won't see them again, right?
To turn it back to a happy note, your family wanted me to ask you if you had a favorite vacation from childhood.
Interesting. Okay. I probably could guess who asked that, but a favorite vacation from childhood. Ooh, this is, and we took some vacation. I shouldn't say some. I mean, we did a fair amount. I didn't count, but favorite vacation. Let me think. So I think everyone in my family knows, because this was a super important, probably one of the more happy days, not the happiest day, because that's probably the birth of my children and marrying my wife. But I was super happy when I finally got to take all of my kids to Dollywood.
Oh, nice.
And my kids know this maybe, but if they don't, they'll see this and they'll know that the reason for I was so happy as an adult is that is one of my fondest memories as a child on a vacation was we went to Dollywood. We got to go to Dollywood and Pigeon Forge and the whole deal. We went up to the mountains. We went to Lookout Mountain, and it was funny because my family, we did a lot of camping because I think it was more economical. But I remember we went with some family friends, and I remember with my dad loading the U-Haul trailer. We had a trailer behind it, right? And that had our camping supplies.
Nice.
Yeah. And we got to go and do that whole thing, Rock City and all the stuff up there.
Yeah.
So for me, that brought back super fond memories of going, I probably shouldn't have said Dollywood. No commercialization.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I realize the rules there.
No.
Okay. But no, that was one of the more fond memories. And so as a favorite vacation, that was definitely up there. We took other vacations, different places. Another one that would probably rank right close to it was a similar, we went camping at a place called Pine Mountain, Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I liked that one so much is they had a bunch of lakes and I got to fish the whole time. Mm-hmm. So,
we've been to Pine Mountain.
Yeah, we have not actually been there as my family. my kids. But yeah, that would be. So yeah, I think those are probably up there.
Yeah.
Favorite vacations.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we rented an RV and went to Pine Mountain.
Oh, nice.
There was a time in our lives when we thought maybe we'd become full-time RVers.
Yeah,
that never came to fruition, but
yeah, we haven't done the RV thing. I've thought about it. I think the kids would like to do it, but yeah, there's something about staying in a hotel because both Elizabeth and I didn't really get to do a lot of that.
Okay.
And so we enjoyed that experience.
Yeah.
Wanted our kids to do that. So we do a lot of vacations around that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. In Pine Mountain, there's Callaway Gardens is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's kind of a neat place to see. Mm-hmm. They have a bird of prey show.
Okay.
Yeah. Love birds of prey. So.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I did not know that about you. Right.
Well, maybe love's a strong word. I think they're neat. So
neat.
I love when the hawks are flying around outside. And had an owl trap a possum here one night. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. That is kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. So that's cool. But so, yeah, you guys like the hotel experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just something that we, not just the hotel, but resorts, nice places like that we, as a child, neither of us really experienced that. And so we've been blessed that my profession provides a good livelihood, and we've planned around that and stayed at some really, really nice places.
Yeah. What's the favorite resort that you've been to?
Be interested. I'm not sure what the kids would say, but we've had really fond memories of Amelia Island, which is north of Jacksonville. We've gone there several times, even from here. I think that's probably one that's up there.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're a kid, you're into sports.
Going back. Okay,
yeah.
We're bouncing all around.
I know,
no,
sorry,
it's all
man.
good. It's all good. It's my life, so it's not that hard. You know?
Well, I just enjoy chasing these rabbit trails.
Sure.
So there's some nuggets to mine occasionally down there. Sure. So, but I did want to continue your journey as you're a child, and let's say you're going into high school now. You're playing sports. Mm-hmm. You're playing all the sports.
Yeah.
There wasn't one particular one that stood out, but then as you start to transition toward college, I know cross country sort of became front and center, right?
Yeah. So running was really critical. Not critical. Instrumental. I focused on that and was blessed to do pretty well at that. And but sports, and I want to be careful because I don't want to ever criticize the talents that God gave me. But I would not want the message, and sometimes I think this gets lost on people. I would not want the message to be that sports. It was an important chapter of my life, but it's just that it's a chapter. Mm-hmm. And that chapter was for a season, right? That season is over, and now we've moved into different seasons. And yeah, I enjoy sports now with my children, coaching them, watching them, attending events, but I'm also very, very careful, and I don't know that I've done a great job at this, at conveying that sports they're a young person's game. Right. That's why most professional athletes retire. You don't see many, the big stories of, 40s. That's kind of it. Right. I mean, and so that season, while it was important, I wouldn't want to highlight that unnecessarily. Right. It was and don't get me wrong, it was a great journey for me and I enjoyed it. But I would not want that to be the sole focus of this conversation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
You don't want it to become an idol.
Yeah.
It's not the primary focus of life.
Right. No. I mean, the focus, if anything, if I could convey anything from this conversation, and I know you as a fellow believer appreciate this, the focus needs to be on my walk and relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I felt like sports pulled me from that. A great example of this, and I remember my roommate at the University of Florida, he would remember this story well because he looked at me like I had a third eye, was I went to a walk-on practice for the University of Florida football team. More than one practice, I should say. I showed up, signed up, they put us on the field and walked on. I walked out of that eventually because I realized I didn't belong on that field, right? I mean, yeah, I played some high school football, but I didn't belong there.
That's a different level, huh?
That was a great way to stop my running career. No more running. You're done. Like, I needed to go back to the track and train some. But that and so that was a classic example for me of making an idol of sports that I had no business making such an idol. So I wouldn't want to, like, again, I'm happy to talk about whatever you want, but I don't want to talk about that any more than we've already talked about it, because I wouldn't want the message to be that was so important. Yes, it was important. It was a chapter just like all these other chapters. But that's how I view it, and I've always viewed that. And in fact, I'm sometimes guilty of compartmentalizing my life and closing that off. I realize, sometimes I don't talk about any of those things, but it's not because I'm ashamed of them or have anything to hide. It's just that, okay, that was a season. It's over. We've moved into this and moved on. And I think looking back, like I threw away a lot of my track medals and stuff. Like I had some. I think I have one or two left that from college and under or high school. But it's because I was like, well, that chapter's over. I don't need to cart this stuff around. Right, a little bit of a minimalist attitude, right, and so anyway, I don't know if that, I don't know where you were going with that, but I was that's rambling a little.
No, that's good. That's an important distinction. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you said that. I'm just trying to follow your story of how you got here, but that's I'm glad you clarified that. Not that I thought sports was an idol in your life now.
No, whatsoever, but it can be. And just like anything could be an idol. I mean, we all know this, your career, your kids. I mean, elevating any one thing over another is easy to do. And it is a natural human behavior. If it wasn't, God wouldn't warn us against it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. That's good. That's a good word. But since you mentioned walking onto the football team, I can't move on without you telling me a little more about that.
No, okay. I'll discuss briefly. We'll discuss briefly, and then we will move on. I saw again. This isn't the internet day of today, but back then there was a posting outside the athletic complex at the University of Florida that says walk-on tryouts for the football team. And I thought, man, this would be the coolest thing ever if I could walk out of that tunnel. And again, I was a decent athlete, but I remember going back to the dorm room, and my college roommate, who I lived with most of all 4 years of college, he was a runner also, and he says, "What are you doing with this flyer?" And I said, "I'm going to go to the tryout." And he's like, "I think that's a bad idea." And I said, No. I tried to persuade him. I mean, we were sitting there arguing about it in our dorm room. And I said, I'm going to do it. And so I did. I went. And they put you in a room. It was underneath the football stadium at the time. And they put you in a room, and the coaches come in, and they take some information down. What'd you play in high school? Blah, blah. And it was a room full of about 50 guys.
What did you play in high school?
So I played primarily cornerback and running back, and anything that was a speed position got me on the field.
Okay.
And and I played. I mean, I had an interception or two. I mean, I broke a finger in high school in a playoff game once. I mean, I played a fair amount, but nothing. I don't want to convey the false message that I could even compete with that. I mean, we had several Division I athletes on our football team. And I was blessed to even just play with them. We had one guy who went to the NFL, was an All-American.
Oh, okay. Cool. Can you say who that is?
Yeah, he played at University of Florida, Byron Hardman. He was an All-American. And so, very nice guy. We went to Florida at the same time. And, but long story short, you're sitting around, and then they bring you out after you fill out all the paperwork. You go on the field, and they do some general workout stuff. And I remember looking then at the guys that were, and I was like, okay, there's a few that look way more like football players than me. There's a few others, and then you look over at the actual scholarship football players, and I'm like, yeah, I don't belong here. Like, it was just one of those epiphanies. Like, I don't belong here. This was cool, but I'm going to get hurt. Like, and so I remember coming back to the dorm room, and my roommate asking me, like, how'd that go? And I said, yeah, I'm not meant to do that. And he just laughed. It was funny at the time. That was the brief moment of football practice. But it's and again, not careful not to talk about sports too much but it was a season where it really is amazing what some athletes can do. I mean, I had, guys I went to high school with that, made ESPN, Sports Center highlights. And back when that was a big thing. I mean, today it's probably on the internet faster than anything, right? But back then you waited around until you saw it. And I mean, a friend of mine played at Auburn and made the highlight there. And it was really neat to see all that. I knew a guy that I trained with on the running side that made the 2000 Olympics, fastest guy I ever saw, a guy named John Capel, and finished, made the Olympics but didn't finish well at them. And I was like, wow, that's how fast the real Olympics are. I remember attending the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta and seeing a guy named Michael Johnson break a world record. We were there, standing there, and that was a really cool experience to see that. So
I remember him. Gold shoes.
Shoes. I mean, seeing athletes like that, it's just amazing. But yeah, I realized, football was not in my cart. College football was not in my cards. Anyway.
You don't typically think of the cross-country body type as
no, that is not. That is
player.
not a typical experience. Yeah, and it goes back to the narrative that pride can lead you to do things that you really have no business doing. And back to what we started this conversation with, God's path for one's life. You can get quickly off that path, right? I mean, it is we know, straight is the gate, narrow is the path. Like, it's easy to get off that path pretty quickly, and pride is one of the biggest things that can get you there.
Yeah.
Right? I can do this.
Yeah.
Well, no, I can't, and I might get hurt or foolish or something consequence from it.
That's a good warning.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll get into some more of the questions your family submitted.
Okay, sure.
Oh, this is great. Robert IV, your son, asked me where you would like to see him in 20 years.
Oh, boy. Wow. That's a deep question. And that's a good question for the moment, because that's something that I think about often and regularly. Not only do I think about it, but it's something that I pray about for him. And his mother and I discuss that often lately. It's a season we're in. But I would say this about that. First of all, none of us can predict the future, right? This, it's not where we have a little snow globe and can shake it and look at it and say, oh, that's what it's going to look like. God doesn't allow us to do that. And I think sometimes because he wants us to struggle, and there's struggles we would go through, and to trust him and lean on him that we wouldn't go through. We would choose not to, right? I mean, let's be honest, human behavior, we'd all choose the easy path. And so long wind up to get to the answer here, but I think for Robert, I would want to see him 20 years from now walking with God in a relationship on his path that God has prepared for him. That would satisfy me. And I know that's, not an answer that as a teenage boy he wants to hear.
He wants the specifics.
He wants me to tell him.
Yeah.
And I can't tell him.
Yeah.
And I know that's frustrating, because you and I both were teenage young men, and we know what the struggle, we don't know the exact struggles, but we know what those struggles could look like, right? Because we all had them. Mm-hmm. And as a teenager, I wanted the same. I wanted somebody to tell me, do this, right? But I think if somebody had told me to do that, I would have done something different anyway, just knowing my personality, right?
Yeah.
And so that's hard to say. I will say I am proud of the fact that he is seeking wisdom from godly men that I trust in the Trinitas and church community. And I think that's important to continue to seek those. And if he seeks out that godly wisdom from other believers, I am convinced that 20 years from now, he will end up in a good spot. right? And I want him to be as close to that path that God has for him as possible.
That's good. I like that. You talked about being an attorney. You have to be a writer. This question is, are you a writer? And what is your favorite essay that you've ever written?
Interesting. Yes, as an attorney, you have to write. I write daily, every day, right? But it's writing for my profession, my job. As far as a writer in the sense of outside of that, so I have long struggled with wanting to write my own book.
Nice.
I sit down. I don't have the time. It takes immense time. But I have started and stopped. I have various files saved on computers and laptops in places, and they're not in any one assembled spot where I've started. Some of it's utter garbage, but I nonetheless have. But I've never actually had the time and the dedication to do it. So perhaps one day I will. But I've always wanted to write. I was always fascinated. I knew we weren't friends, but I knew a colleague who, I think he practices in Las Vegas or California, somewhere out there. We went to law school briefly, but he wrote a book. And I know a few other colleagues that have written books on different topics, both fictional and non-fictional. And I've always wanted to do that in both sense. I've started and stopped on on both sides, actually, non-fiction and fiction. So I don't, again, I'm not focused enough to finish the project yet. Doesn't mean I won't, but right now that's just not the season I'm in.
You need big blocks of time to really,
Yeah, need big blocks of time, and for me to write, it's the same as when I write so when I have something important to write for my job, I will get up early and go to the office. Sometimes I'll be there at 6 a.m. before anybody else gets there. Right. And so the 2 hours or so before any staff or anybody else shows up, I can crank out what I need to write.
Yeah, uninterrupted time.
In fact, my staff knows we don't send anything that I write in the afternoon because it could get me in trouble or it's utter garbage.
That's a good rule. I like
that. I've learned that. Don't send out a will that I drafted at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Not a good idea.
You'll revisit it at 6 a.m.
I'll revisit it at 6 a.m. or whenever I get in, and it's a lot better product.
Yeah.
And so for me, writing is something. As far as favorite essay, that was part of your question. If it's one that I've written, I probably would say I was blessed to have written an article that was published. And it was more than an article. It was a law review publication, which law review in law school matters. But my publication was cited and changed the law in a couple places. It was a commentary I wrote on a Supreme Court case and managed to get it published. That piece was a really instrumental part of my professional career. Very few law students get published, much less even practicing lawyers.
That's really cool.
And so that was probably my favorite essay just because of the professional notoriety and success that came with it.
Can you tell us some about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it was a case involving the direct shipment of wine.
Okay.
So the case I think was Granholm versus U.S. It was a Supreme Court case, United States Supreme Court case in the early 2000s. Pre early 2000s, most states had a 3-tiered structure on shipping alcohol, primarily wine, but all alcohol, coming out of Prohibition, where you could not directly, what we do today, people order Amazon, you can order a bottle of wine and have it shipped from your favorite vineyard right to your house. You could not do that back then. Back then you had to ship it through a 3-tiered system involving a distributor to the wholesaler to the retailer, and then you go to the store and purchase it. And so that was struck down as unconstitutional. And so when I was in law school, I published an article about that system being unconstitutional and what it meant for various laws around the country. And ultimately, in the state of Arkansas, they had and they cited the case and they changed the law there. They've changed it in Florida. They've changed it in other places. So it was a pretty fascinating case, and I was just right time, right moment, and was able to put it all together.
Yeah.
And I had a law professor who helped me, shape shaped the arguments and kept me on track to get it to a point to publish it, because I would have wandered all over the place. He's like, no, you got to do it. This is your deadline.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
What made you choose that particular thing?
So one, I was kind of fascinated by it, and I had told some other fellow law students about a winery that we had in St. Augustine, and tried to order some, and they actually said, no, you can't do that, you can't ship it. I said, oh, well, unbeknownst to me, I did not know. And so was kind of fascinated by that whole area of the law and didn't realize it existed. And the case came out around that time, and so that's what prompted it.
Yeah. That's cool. You feel like there's a lot of laws like that out there still that are remnants of...
Yeah, there's all sorts of... I mean, the laws don't adapt a lot of times with the times, and some stuff just gets left on the books and they're left behind. Some states are really good at it, and I'm sure the legislatures try, but sometimes there's stuff overlooked and you're like, oh, I didn't ever encounter that.
Mm-hmm.
It's ignored till somebody runs into it.
Yeah.
And then they file suit, and because it's causing a problem for whatever their business or personal life.
Is that the way those kind of laws are typically addressed, is because someone files suit about it?
Typically. Otherwise, most people, it's obscure and it's overlooked and forgotten about.
So when you say that, that makes me think of regulations around guns as well. Like, you can't just order a gun and have it shipped to your house. It has to go to, your local licensed gun store.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a government. Yeah, it's just a government making choices about what they are going to regulate and what they're not going to regulate, and they're bound by the Constitution, right? And when they pass laws, Congress, state legislatures, they're bound by the Constitution. That's the overarching document that gives us our legal framework.
And so, if we think something's unconstitutional, then we challenge it in court, and it
works its way up, and the courts say yes, it is, or no, it's not.
Yeah.
And if they say no, it's not, generally you lose. Yeah.
Have you written anything else?
Yeah, I've got another law review article that I haven't published just because it needs polishing. Again, it's in the stack of starts and stops, but that one's pretty far along. That one I wrote I finished it not long after passing the bar exam, and just never got around to. It needs to be updated because the law has changed in the last 20 years, but it's still very relevant. I just haven't had time to focus on it. It requires, again, dedicated time to sit down and do it. Yeah. Although that one I'm starting to, because I think it's highly relevant to our current framework of government, what we're going through in the last few years. And so I've got some colleagues that are encouraging me to publish it, and I just haven't found the time.
So I know you mentioned the books. So you have both a fiction work and a nonfiction work that you're...
I do.
You have started?
I do. I have ideas that I've, a lot of times I for a while there on the fiction side, I would just sketch out a chapter. Framework, I've got an outline, fill in some details. And like I said, some of it's utter garbage. And then some of it, I'm like, oh, that actually might have some legs to it.
Now, is this like John Grisham kind of stuff you're writing from a lawyer's perspective?
I've read all John Grisham. I loved his books, loved his, I even went to the bookstore outside of Memphis that he started at. I can't remember the name of it, but was, obviously he was a practicing lawyer and was just a really good author.
Yeah. I think Mandy's read all of his as well.
Yeah, there's some really good stories in there. And
she's also a big Jack Reacher fan. But
okay, yeah. Yeah. And trying to think of other one. Michael Conley is another author that I like on the fiction side. Everybody knows The Lincoln Lawyer is the one that he wrote, if you've seen that movie. But those are... But yeah, it's along those style on the fiction side.
Okay.
I recently reread a book called Land Remembered, which is about Florida history. Fascinating fiction book that weaves in what it was like, Florida was like for the last couple hundred years. And so, yeah, stuff like that interests me on the fiction side. And so I'm trying to write something like that. But it's not any the problem I've got is it's all over the map in terms of what is there. Because I'll have an idea, sketch it out, and then not that I lose interest, but I don't have time. I get pulled away from something and it just languishes, and I'm like, 6 months later, I was like, oh yeah, that was really good, but now where I can't reorient myself. I think if I ever had time, and again, it's just not the season, right, with where my kids are at. So maybe one day retirement, or who knows, different season.
That Florida connection seems really important to you, the history there and not the family ties. Is that part of your fiction?
I think so. I think I would like to. I'd like to weave that in because that is it's ingrained in who I am, right? If you look through my life and the stories, that's so much a part of my background. Mm-hmm. And it's rare. There's not a lot of people that can claim that.
Yeah.
Like if you look back through Florida history, there's just not a lot of people that have that background.
Yeah. Mostly transplants.
Mostly. Yeah. Majority. I'd say probably greater than 90% of the population.
Yeah. Yeah. Even my family, they migrated here, when my parents were teenagers.
So what, probably the 50s, 60s?
Yeah.
Some age, something like that. Yeah. I mean, and what was that largely driven by? Air conditioning. Nobody wanted to live in Florida before the air conditioning. If you look at and I've looked at the population studies, nobody wanted to live here. We had mosquitoes, terrible weather, hurricanes.
I've wondered how people did it prior to air conditioning.
It's fascinating when you look at and you listen to the stories. And there was a professor at University of Florida. He's deceased also, and he was one of my favorite professors. Bertram Wyatt Brown. Dr. Brown he led the oral history program. And he taught, history of the South and some really neat, stuff. And he encouraged me to get some of those oral histories, which I was blessed to get from some of my family members who are long deceased. Like I remember sitting one summer with my grandfather's older sister, who was older than him by about 20 plus years, if I remember right.
Oh, wow.
So, getting some of those histories of what it was like before air conditioning, right? People who grew up, in Florida in the Depression, and it's like most people wouldn't live here. It's radically different than anything any of us enjoy in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. It would. It's hard to imagine.
Now, I remember, like, my wife taught school in a rural county called Baker County, and outside of Jacksonville. It was her first teaching job. And I remember helping her move in her first classroom, and the classroom had the old-fashioned crank windows. Mm-hmm. Because that's how they cooled them off. There was no air conditioning. Yeah. I mean, they had air conditioning now, but when she taught, thank goodness. But before, there was no air conditioning.
Yeah.
And I remember the school that I went to was a little country rural school. And I remember one of the classrooms was like a wooden building, right? And all of them had wooden windows that went up, and that was how it was cooled off. Different environment.
Yeah, I'll tell you how old I am as well. So I was born in Florida, but I grew up in Mississippi, and I remember our school didn't get air conditioned until I was in the 4th grade.
Yeah. So my elementary school didn't have air conditioning. Like I said, it was you open the windows and. Yeah, and again, I think kids back then, I think were more tolerant, right? Now we sound like the old generation. Right? In my day, walk 5 miles back and forth uphill, snow. Well, no snow in Florida, really, generally, except last year. But I think, generally, though, I think there was more because you didn't have the distractions, right? No iPads, no technology. It was, and so the environment was, people you just dealt with it. Yeah. You didn't know any better.
Yeah, you didn't know any better.
Didn't know any better.
You acclimate to what you're in, and that's all you know.
That's right. So,
well, Robert, what advice would you have for your 20-year-old self?
Oh, boy. That's a tough one, right? Because I would not want anything I say to sound like regret, right? I think I would tell myself, focus more on my relationship with God than my relationship with people. And I'll give you a little context that might help that answer and why I say that. When I was 20 at the University of Florida, I was in the middle I started into student government politics at one of the largest universities in the country. And I did pretty well at the point where one of the many reasons I left for law school and didn't stay at the University of Florida. I think what prompted me around that was I needed to leave because I was thinking about running for student body president. I ran early on and got involved with the student senate and did that whole path. And that path showed me that politics is nothing but full of prideful issues. We'll just leave it at that. I have some dear friends that are politicians, and I don't mean to criticize their chosen profession, but that's even more difficult path to walk, in my opinion. And so my 20-year-old self, I was focused too much on my relationships with people, some of which, don't get me wrong, I met some really great people that I'm still friends with today and still, connect with, right? But sometimes I was so focused on relationships that didn't matter. And I drifted pretty far off my path, if you will. And my relationship with the Lord was suffering to the point where it took me a while to come back to that.
What brought you back?
Necessity, right? I realized this is not the life I'm supposed to live. This is not the path I'm supposed to be on. I couldn't point to it. There's no one event. I couldn't say, oh, that one event, that day and that time, right? But definitely realized that relationships with people, they do matter. But I think relationships with people that are like-minded in value structure matter, right? Not just having, it would be similar, and again, we didn't have this in my generation, right? It'd be similar today, and I don't have any of the social media platforms, right? I think that it would be similar to counting the heart emojis and likes that I get, right? Mm-hmm. Without meaningful, deep relationships. That would be my advice.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. What do you want yourself to remember 20 years from now about Robert Jones today?
Hopefully 20 years from now, if I'm still here and breathing, I hope to remember the relationships that I have developed with my children and my wife. Right. I hope to remember the details, the little moments. Right. I mean, I realize that much like your children are growing up, my children are similar. And you look at them and you're like, wow, I remember bringing you from the hospital. Right. And I have pictures on my phone and other things. And I'm like, wow, I remember that event. I hope to be able to remember those things without the need of pictures and, and so forth. Because memories, like anything, if you don't cultivate them, they fade.
Yeah.
They fade quickly. It's easily and I'm like, oh yeah, I do remember that. Like just this conversation, you asking me about my childhood, I had to sit there and think about a few things. And so you realize memories fade quickly. I hope that 20 years from now, that my memories of my wife and children have not faded. Yeah.
We oftentimes, obviously I'm into photography and videography.
You don't say.
And stuff.
Never knew that about you, Matt.
And I've probably mentioned this maybe in other episodes, but we'll oftentimes sit down as a family and just pull up the photos from the iPhone, on our Apple TV.
Oh, wow.
And we'll just scroll through the photos, from 10 years ago or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And it just brings back to memory all these things that our family has done. It helps remind us about our family culture and who we are and where we've come from. And
might have to steal that one from you. I do it on my phone, and Elizabeth has it. She set it up. I think she set it up, or somebody set it up where I can do that, and it pops these remembrance photos up, right? Mm-hmm. Feeds. And I know she does that with the kids on her phone, but we never put it up on the TV. That might be that might be fun.
Yeah.
Because, we have videos and all this stuff and which again, constantly, I used to back up some of that, probably need to do a better job. I think the cloud saves some of it. But I think about, our generation, I remember family albums, right? Mm-hmm. And like even and my grandparents who are 90s, they have albums, and we go visit them, we go look through them. Yeah. And look, and they're photo albums, right?
Yeah.
But we don't do that. Like ours are all electronic, right? Yeah. And so that ability to have access to those and those memories, I think, because again, memories fade if you don't actually remind yourself.
Yeah. I'm thankful these phones are a blessing and a curse, but one of the great things is that it allows you to get the pictures you know, more easily.
Yeah.
And then, and there's one thing for me to sit and just scroll through them privately, which is fine, but it's another thing when we're gathered as a family and going through them together.
I like that. That's useful. Like I said, I may borrow that one.
We all remember different aspects of it, and it's just been a real blessing for our family. Okay, son Robert also wanted me to ask if there's anything that he's been blamed for that you actually did. And I think he has one specific incident in mind, maybe related to a Nerf gun.
That's fair enough. Okay, I was kind of racking my brain there for a minute. I'm glad for that context. So yes, he and I, when he was younger, a few years back, we used to play basically war with Nerf guns. He and I would just shoot each other. I mean, we would have epic battles. I mean, to the point where I think a couple times I may probably even like hurt myself trying to run around the house. And this was primarily our house in Jacksonville, right? We did it a couple times here, but not nearly to the extent we used to do it there. And there was a chandelier in the kitchen that I'm pretty sure I shot the bullet. I'll admit here publicly that I shot it.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, and damaged the chandelier. And I may have tried to blame him to avoid the penalty.
Oh man, your own son.
I know, right? But he wanted to play. Yeah, and it damaged the chandelier. Not too bad. It didn't pull it down off the wall or anything out of the ceiling, but it definitely was something we had to fix.
Those Nerf guns are more powerful than you thought.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, come on. It was, who knew that was going to happen?
Yeah. That is a great time. The Nerf guns are so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got the machine gun version, in fact, in the closet.
Yep. I think we had one of those with the little Tommy gun canister. Yeah, we had one of those. We had a ton of them. And Robert and I, something about the girls, they really didn't take to that.
Really?
Yeah. It was just, he and I had that pleasure.
Yeah. It's almost like we're designed differently.
I think so.
Was there ever an incident with a Nerf gun and a thumbtack?
I deny all. No admission of liability related to a thumbtack that may have been inserted in a bullet.
That was at you or him?
I don't recall.
You are a good attorney.
Yeah. Learned a thing or two. I'd forgotten all about those memories. That was good.
That's funny. Who are the 3 most influential people in your life?
That's an interesting question, and I'm going to, as typical, give a roundabout answer. Because I don't think that's straightforward. And again, I don't like ranking lists, right, just in life, because I do believe that list changes based on the season of life you're in, right? I mean, I'm sure I could sit here and come up with 3, but then I would be leaving out so many other people that were influential in that moment, right? And I assume by people, right, we're going to say, actual living human beings, right? Because I also believe that people can be influential from different generations, right? You read someone's testimony, or you hear someone's testimony that's long dead. That can be influential at the moment. So
I think these were people that you knew.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. I think anybody who knows me would know that one of the most influential people in my life has been my grandfather, for many different reasons, and just both character, values, statements, conversations over the years, that sort of thing. So that's and he's still with us. So that's an easy one. I think over many different seasons.
This is Robert the First.
Yeah, this is Senior. We don't go by the first, but yes. Fair enough. For those that think they're all Roman numerals. My dad's a junior. We didn't. Roman numerals waited till my generation, right, and my sons. But yeah, I think that one that's an easy one. After that, though, like I said, there would be different seasons, right? I mean, because again, growing up, my parents are influential, right? I mean, I've got other relatives, grandmother influential, those sort of things. But so again, not to offend any one person, right? But definitely, my grandfather would be probably top of the list if I had to pick somebody in that respect over the many seasons. And after that, though, there's other people that fall in that I would say are influential, right? Like, for example, my grandfather's friend who was a judge who, I met and influenced me to go to law school, helped me. Actually sat there at a breakfast cafe and it was a little country breakfast place, said, "Is there anything I can do to tell you not to go to law school?" I thought he was being mean. Turns out he was telling me it's a tough road. Mm. And I want to prepare you, if you really want to do it, and that stuck with me when the times got really tough. So that was really influential, right? And the professor that encouraged me to get the LLM, that was influential at that moment. So yeah, they may not be top three overarching, but they definitely were. My Sunday school teacher as a teenager who led me to the Lord. I had no relationship with the Lord at that time, right? Brother Schaefer was a really important influence. But also my youth pastor who ended up being the pastor that married Elizabeth and I, Tom Messer. I probably would be in that top three category, right? I mean, it just depends. I think it depends. So, I mean, these are. That's why I said I don't like lists like that because it's hard for me to put someone on that list and then say, well, they were influential at that moment. They might not be influential now, right? And I could name people now currently, but I wouldn't want to offend anybody leaving them off. And so so I've never been really good at those lists.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I really answered that question, but I kind of did.
No, that's good. The list is large, which is great.
Yeah. And I think it's a list that's influenced by the moment, right? And so I could pick three people today that may not be influential 10 years from now.
Yeah.
But they are influential today for whatever reason, or 10 years ago they were influential, right? I mean, I can think of my mentor, the lawyer that trained me when I was young. I mean, I learned a lot from him. That was influential on who I am today and how I practice. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah. God brings people in and out of our lives as we keep talking about the path and for his plans and purposes in those times. Mm-hmm. And changes over time. What do you want your great grandkids to remember about you?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. First of all, I would like to say, hopefully I'm blessed to know them. That would be awesome, right? Because my kids know my grandparents.
Yeah.
And that's pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
So I would love for my great-grandkids to know me, to be around. Who knows? I mean, that's not for us. I mean, that's God's timing. But I would want my great-grandkids to know I walk my path with God. And I would want them to know that I loved my children and my wife during that path or during that walk. That would be something that if I were blessed to know my great-grandkids, that I would want to convey to them. And if I'm not blessed to know them, I would want them to reflect on that statement, that they know that.
Best answer you can give. Mm-hmm. So if there's anyone watching this that's considering the law profession, what advice would you give to them?
My first advice would be find someone who is in the profession that you can trust and respect and have a conversation with them. I wouldn't say don't do it. I wouldn't say do it. But I would find someone that their values line up with yours and that you trust and respect their opinion and have a conversation with them so that they can explain it to you. And if you can't find someone, call me. I'll do it. I'll talk to anyone about it. But it's going to mean more from someone you have a relationship with, and I've counseled people to do it and to not do it. And I've counseled people, I've said not do it, that ended up doing it and they're fine. And I've counseled people to do it that they shouldn't have, right? And so, again, but I do think conversations are worthwhile. And this is true of anything, not just law. I mean, it's something I tell my children. I hope they hear it. Don't do something for the money. A lawyer who I respect immensely, his family and my family were really close. I didn't actually know he was a lawyer until after I had already started practicing law. And I got to know him a little bit better. His father was one of my grandfather's really close friends. And like I said, he lived in another state at the time, and so I wasn't really connected to him. But I ended up developing a relationship with him, and he told me one time, and I'll never forget it, he said, practice the area of law that you like or love, don't chase the money. Right. And that's so tempting, not just in the law, but in so many things. People in our culture today, I think, distorts this largely. Is you got to have money to be successful. No, you don't. Money makes it easier. It also has its own problems, right? And so, but it certainly, do something because you want to do it. Do something because you love to do it. Do something because it's helping someone. You'll be far more rewarded. But I think if you do something solely to be rich or make a bunch of money, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, that's good. What has surprised you most about this career?
Oh gosh, the stories people confide. I can't share them with you, but I've heard it all, literally. And I'm sure there's some I haven't that I will hear. Stuff that when I was in law school, professors were like, oh, someone's going to tell you this or someone's going to do that. I'm like, no way. Sure enough, I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. And it's the gamut of human behavior, everything from the bad to the really good and everything in between. Now, some of those have offered opportunities to witness and minister to people, right? And I've tried to approach it that way within the ethical and professional bounds that I have. But it's fascinating. It's human behavior at the end of the day.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that you were hoping I would ask?
No, I mean, I think we've covered, childhood, early adulthood. I think, obviously there was a couple periods where, the birth of the children, right? I would say I'd mention those. Those were all monumental events for me. Is it anybody, right? I mean, I said before that, I don't see how anybody doesn't believe in God and the birth of a child. Those were instrumental events, as one can imagine, that shaped me to where I'm at, right? Changed my focus. Not that when we got married but it was still largely a lot of individualistic still, right? I mean, my wife and I are together, but we're two adults, right? Suddenly when children are involved, children, as you know, children are they depend on you for everything. They're helpless. They can't do anything. I think the birth of my son and my oldest put me on that path. And then each one of my children reminded me of that and brought out new distinctions of this is not about me. This is about them, right? Children are a blessing from God, and they also have a way of raising you. My father-in-law loves to say that. He loves to say that children are God's way of raising parents. And I used to think, like, what in the world are you talking about, right? If I were talking to him, that's what I would say. Like, what are you talking about? But now, having had children for a while, I see that. They were God's way of teaching Elizabeth and I some things. Right, yeah. Of raising us to that maturity level.
Yeah.
And that I am very thankful for.
I think those monumental relationship aspects in our life, marriage and having children, like each one of those, I feel like are great pictures of who we are in relation to God. Mm-hmm. And you, as you're saying, they're raising you. God is using those to teach us about his relationship with us.
Yeah.
Robert, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah.
This is episode 11.
Okay.
research shows that only 8% of podcasters ever make it past episode 10. So you have helped usher us into some elite territory.
Happy to do it. Pleasure being on this podcast with you. I certainly enjoy our time and certainly enjoy our friendship outside of this. So, absolutely a pleasure to do this for you, and glad to be number 11. And again, take no responsibility whatsoever. But if the views go down, you can blame me.
Sounds good. Thank you, Robert.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.